Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. And this is going to be a new what if. What if Deku had the Quirk Predator? So let's not waste any time and let's get right into it. So let me explain this power. This power first originated from the person Rimuru Tempest. If you don't know who that is, go watch The Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. It's a really good anime and I really recommend it. So how this power is going to work for Izuku is anything that he eats or ingests into his body, he'll gain the abilities of it and the powers of what he just ate or ingested. So for this scenario to work, I want to say that Izuku's dad is still around and his job is a zookeeper. I know that's funny, but just go on with it. So as Izuku goes to the Quirk doctor the next day, the Quirk doctor explains that his quirk is called Predator and that anything he eats or ingests, he can gain the abilities of what he just ate. Izuku is happy that he has a quirk. He realizes that he's not as strong as Kacchan, and he realizes that he's gonna need to train to catch up with him. As Izuku goes home, he tells his dad what his quirk is. As Izuku's dad is happy that Izuku has a quirk, Izuku continues asking his dad if he can get animal DNA from the zoo. As Izuku's dad thinks about this, thinking that he might get yelled by his boss, as Izuku begs his dad for him to do this for him. As Izuku's dad sighs, he tells Izuku that he wants him to train as hard as he can if he does this for him. As Izuku tells his dad that he promises to train hard, and he also says that he's going to become the #1 hero. As Izuku goes to his room, thinking what he might do when he gets all the DNA from the animals, he gets thirsty and goes and grabs a cup of water. As Izuku drinks the cup of water, he realizes that he's gotten the ability to turn into water and slightly control it. As Izuku goes outside to test this ability, he sees that he's able to turn into water and he's able to create a water slash. As Izuku continues on testing his abilities, his mom calls him in, telling him that it's time for dinner. As Izuku goes home and eats dinner, he realizes that he's gotten the abilities to absorb sunlight for energy, and he also gets a slight healing factor from the plants that he ate. And he's also gotten enhanced senses and an overall stat boost from all the meat that he ate. Now I'm gonna do an 8-year time skip, and in between that time skip, Izuku's gotten all the DNA from the animals and has also enhanced his abilities regularly. So he gets super strength, super speed, super durability, poison teeth, poison spit. He's able to jump really high. His reflexes are really good, and he also has this ability where he can recover even quicker if he sleeps, and he gets a slight Zenkai boost, you can call it. And he also has the ability to like camouflage himself, and he can sneak around easily in places. And he's also able to climb walls and make spider webs, but it's not as strong as Spider-Man's. And he's also able to make poison needles with his hair. And his senses are like maxed out. He can hear, see, and smell anything from like a mile radius. And basically that's all the powers that Izuku has for right now. So Izuku's 12 right now, and let's say he's working on a homework assignment and he starts like chewing on his pencil. I don't know why, but he is. And a small piece of that wood goes into his like body, and while Izuku's just doing his homework, he gains the ability to turn himself into wood. As Izuku's surprised that he got this ability. As Izuku goes and thinks what else could he eat to gain other abilities. As Izuku goes to his kitchen drawer and picks up a fork and uses his super strength to break a tiny bit off and eat it, he got the ability to turn his body into metal. And like that's the abilities that I'm gonna give him for now, for till the start of the anime. So we start off with Izuku sitting in class waiting for his teacher. As his teacher walks in holding career form papers and telling the class that he knows that everyone wants to be a hero, and throws the papers up in the air. As everyone in class starts to show off their quirk except for Izuku and Bakugo. As Bakugo says his snarky remark saying that everyone probably might as well be a sidekick for a D-lister. As Izuku is not fazed by this. As the teacher starts to explain that who wants to go to UA, he says that he sees that both Izuku and Kacchan want to go UA. as Kacchan looks at Izuku and snarls and gives him an angry look. As Izuku doesn't mind this and just goes on doing his work. After class, Kacchan walks up to Izuku and tells him that he better not get in his way and blows up his hero notebook. As Izuku chuckles in his mind, thinking that there's no way that Kacchan is able to beat him. After that, Izuku wanted to go home early today, so he took a shortcut under a bridge. As he went under the bridge, he realized that something was about to attack him. As Izuku dodges at the right moment before the sludge monster could even lunge at him, the sludge monster was confused in what just happened, so Izuku punched it, but his punch was to no avail, as the sludge monster dragged him in and started to try to go inside Izuku's body. But Izuku had no other choice and bites down and takes a piece of the sludge monster, as a pop-up comes up telling him that he got the power to turn into a slime. As Izuku is confused, he uses his water slashes and makes the sludge monster into pieces. So he takes 2 bottles and puts the sludge monster in them. But before anything else could happen, All Might comes up saying, "I'm here," and he sees that Izuku already took care of the sludge monster. As Izuku hands All Might the 2 bottles and tells him that he's sorry for using his quirk, and All Might just replies saying that it's alright and that he already took care of the sludge villain, so there's no need to apologize. As Izuku takes out his notebook, wanting All Might to sign it, but he sees that All Might already signed it. As All Might chuckles and jumps away, but Izuku wanted to ask him one more thing, and jumps right next to All Might and accidentally nudges him. As the sludge bottles fall out of All Might's pocket, they don't realize, as both All Might and Deku land next to a rooftop. As All Might asks Izuku why he was following him, Izuku responds by saying that he had a question for All Might. As All Might was running out of time, he asks Izuku what his question was immediately. As before Izuku could even ask his question, All Might deflates. As All Might deflates, Izuku thinks that this is an imposter and gets in a fighting stance ready to fight. But before he could punch or fight All Might assures him that he's the real All Might and that he has a time limit now because of his injury. As All Might shows him his injury, Izuku understands. Then Izuku asks him his question. His question is, can someone be a hero even without a flashy quirk? As All Might answers, he tells him that anyone with a quirk can be a hero. As Izuku understands and tells All Might that he'll become the best hero that he can be. But before Izuku could even finish, there's a loud explosion in the distance. Before All Might could even react, Izuku jumps off the building and starts running toward the explosion. As Izuku gets there, he sees that Kacchan was being encased and trapped by the sludge monster. As he sees this, he doesn't even think and runs into the battle, trying to save his former comrade. He makes his hands into claws and claws Kacchan out and pulls him out of the sludge monster. As he does this, he uses his water blades and cuts the sludge monster into the pieces. As he does this, a small piece of the sludge monster escapes. As Izuku is also praised and scolded for defeating the sludge monster and saving his friend, but acting reckless and running into the battle. As Izuku is being scolded and praised, Kacchan looks at Izuku and snarls. As they start to leave, Kacchan tells Izuku that he didn't need his help. As Kacchan snarls and walks away, as Izuku looks at Kacchan and chuckles and leaves. As Izuku starts walking away, All Might pops up, telling Izuku that he wanted him to be his successor, as Izuku didn't understand what All Might meant. All Might meant that he could pass on his quirk and that he can give it to other people. Izuku was confused what All Might meant, but as All Might explained it more, Izuku decided that he wanted to be All Might's successor. On the first day of the 10-month training, All Might realizes that Izuku could probably handle One For All straight off the bat. So Izuku uses One For All, and as soon as he uses 100%, his hands fall off. As Izuku was confused that he didn't feel any pain, and then reaches out for his hand and just reattaches it. As both All Might and Izuku were confused on what just happened, Izuku tells All Might that this must have been from his slime ability when he accidentally ate some of the sludge monster. Izuku continues on training and figures out he can use around 80% of One for All without his hands falling off. But since Izuku has more time to train, he can use full cowling this time, and he can use around 50% of it. The day before the entrance exam, Izuku had a question about One for All for All Might. As Izuku was about to ask this question to All Might, they were rudely interrupted by Shigaraki slow clapping and coming closer and closer. We start off with Shigaraki slow clapping and coming toward both All Might and Izuku. As All Might asks who Shigaraki is, Shigaraki responds by saying he's a subordinate of All for One. As All Might is in shock, Shigaraki lunges at All Might, but Izuku jumps right in front of him and Shigaraki touches Izuku's arm. Izuku's arm falls off and Shigaraki thought that he won the battle, but Izuku just picked up his hand and put it right back on. As Shigaraki was confused in what just happened, he kept on attacking Izuku, but Izuku kept on regenerating. As Shigaraki was even more confused, so he knew that this wasn't a battle that he'll be able to win and retreats as Kirigiri opens a portal and takes Shigaraki back to his villain lair. You guys are probably wondering how All for One and Shigaraki knew where All Might and Izuku were. If you remember, in the last part, this tiny bit of the sludge monster escaped, and there was also a tiny bit of the sludge monster in Izuku. So the sludge monster was able to track Izuku down, and he told All for One, as All for One thought this was a perfect chance to attack Izuku and All Might and get rid of One for All permanently. But their plan backfired because they didn't know that Izuku had a regeneration ability. As Izuku asks All Might who All for One is, All Might tells Izuku everything about One for All and its past. As Izuku realizes what's going on, Izuku says that this explains many things. As All Might asks Izuku what he means. As Izuku says, when he ate All Might's hair, he gained 2 more abilities called Black Whip and Float. As All Might hears the words float, he remembers Nana Shimura and tells Izuku that this must be the true power of One for All. As Izuku continues, he tells All Might that there are more quirks, but they're locked to him. As All Might is confused, he tells Izuku that this must be the past successors' quirks. The next day, Izuku goes to UA to take the entrance exam. He does decent on the written portion, and then he goes to President Mike's orientation for the robot situation. As President Mike's explaining this, Izuku doesn't mumble here, so Ida doesn't say anything. So they go to the place where they take their exam, and President Mike yells go. As Ida starts running, Izuku is much faster than anyone else there, and he's defeating every robot that he sees. Izuku accidentally put too much power into one of his punches, and he destroyed everything in the background that was behind the robot. Izuku was surprised by his own strength, and so was everyone else, as everyone else was wondering what this man's quirk was. As Ida looks at Izuku, knowing that he was much faster than him from the start of the exam. As Ida wonders in how fast Izuku is, then everyone hears the 0 Point robot, as they hear a scream calling for help, as Izuku, without even hesitating, runs toward the rubble, lifts the rubble up and picks up Uraraka and puts her in a safe zone. As he says, "You're welcome," and runs back and jumps as high as he can, as he didn't even know how high he jumped, but he was still focused as he does an axe kick and slices the robot right down the middle, cutting it right in half. As everyone is astonished by Izuku's strength, and so was Izuku, as Izuku felt like he was relying too much on One for All. As Izuku thinks of ways that he might be able to use his own quirk instead of just One for All. As Izuku wonders, he thinks what if he uses his slime ability plus his predator skill to gain new skills. As Izuku piles more and more robots on top of the 0 Pointer, and then he turns his body into slime and engulfs every robot there. As he engulfs them, he gets 2 abilities. He gets Artillery and Armory. As Izuku wonders what this skill is, he turns on the skill Armory for his whole body to be covered just like armor. Then he turns on his skill Artillery for his hand to be turned into a minigun. As Izuku shoots it, he realizes that it's just the same as the robots. as Izuku wonders what if he puts One for All into it. So he shoots a bullet that was engulfed with One for All, and it destroys a building that was right there, completely gone. As President Mike yells at Izuku to stop and that the exam is over and that he's not allowed to use his quirk, as Izuku apologizes and leaves. Everyone was shocked at Izuku's strength and wondered what his quirk was. Even Bakugo was shocked at Izuku, because he didn't know how strong he got over the 10 months. Then he scowled in anger, angry that Izuku was able to beat him. As the rest of the week was going on, Izuku got his letter from UA. It said that he passed and he got 300 villain points and 200 rescue points. As the All Might hologram continues, it says that no one in history of UA has gotten this many points, and that they're still gonna put him in the same class as the others, but he's gonna be pushed to his limits. As Izuku hears this, he gulps and wonders how hard they're gonna be pushing him. As Izuku goes to the school next day, he sees a giant door and wonders if there's giants going to the school. As Izuku opens the door, he sees that Ida is scolding Bakugo for disrespecting school property. As Bakugo sees Izuku, he rushes at him and is about to explode him, but Aizawa came in at the right moment and stopped Bakugo's quirk from activating. As he does this, Bakugo's hand just lands on Izuku's face. Aizawa tells everyone to go sit down in their seats and that he's very disappointed in them because it took them 15 seconds to quiet down. Then he tells everyone to put on the gym uniforms and go outside. As they go outside, they see a 10-ton ball just waiting there. As Aizawa tells Izuku to pick up the ball and throw it, Izuku casually picks up the ball and chucks it, and it goes around 1,000 meters as it creates a shockwave and blows everyone back. Aizawa tells everyone that they need to throw a ball, as everyone looks at Aizawa wondering if they have to throw the 10-ton ball. Aizawa assures them that they only need to throw a small ball, as Bakugo yells at Aizawa, telling him that he could probably throw the 10-ton ball. Aizawa looks at Bakugo as in a smirk and tells him that he probably couldn't, and hands him the small ball, and then Bakugo throws it with fury and gets 700 meters. As Bakugo scowls, thinking that he got 700 meters with a small ball. As Izuku's tests were much harder because they were usually weighted and other stuff were to make it harder on him. But he still came in first place, even though he was having a much harder time than everyone else. And still, Aizawa still does the, if you come in last place, you're getting expelled. So Mineta is still getting expelled, so he's not gonna be in the story anymore. So now we're gonna skip to the hero versus villain training. And so what happens here, All Might comes in saying, "I'm here," and explains the heroes and versus villains training. And Izuku's costume is going to be an amalgamation of both his costume and Rimuru Tempest's costume. Now let's just get on with the story. So what happens here is, when I said that the school was going to go hard on him, I'm going to say hard. So what happens here is that Bakugo, Ida, and Uraraka are the villains, and Izuku is the only hero. So now what's going to happen here is Ida tells Uraraka and Bakugo that they should all stay behind to guard the bomb because it's more strategical. But Bakugo interjects, telling Ida that he wants to go fight Izuku. But Ida interjects, telling Bakugo that none of them have a chance of beating Izuku. He's too overpowered. Bakugo didn't listen to Ida. Bakugo still rushes at Izuku, trying to defeat him. But Bakugo isn't dumb, so he releases his 2 grenade gauntlets, which creates a massive explosion. But Izuku had a plan for this. He makes a massive punch which redirects the explosion completely, but Bakugo was defenseless against this, so Izuku had no other choice but to save Bakugo. He runs in past the explosion, going super fast, and punches a giant hole in the wall where they can hide. As Bakugo saw this as a perfect chance to beat Izuku, he lunges at Izuku ready to attack. But before even Bakugo could notice, Izuku goes right behind him and gives him a swift neck chop right to the neck, defeating him. As Izuku saw this as a perfect chance to go retrieve the bomb, he goes upstairs ready to defeat Ida and Uraraka. As he enters the room, both Ida and Uraraka made a trap for him, as Uraraka used a big chunk of the building and floated it up in the air, and Ida kicked it with his reciprocal burst and smashed it right into Izuku as fast as they possibly could. As they did this, Izuku landed right in the wall of the building and made a giant crater. But Izuku just crawls out of it and brushes himself off. And before Ida and Uraka could even blink, Izuku runs up to the bomb, grabs it, and makes a giant hole in the ceiling while he jumps up in the air and lands outside with the bomb in his hand. So we start off with Izuku going home from the hero versus villain battle. The next day, Aizawa tells them that they're going to the USJ, as everyone gets excited and puts on their hero costumes, as they get on the bus and they start driving to the USJ. As Izuku gets closer and closer to the building, he feels a strange presence, as he doesn't know what it is, but he doesn't tell anyone just yet. As they enter the building, Izuku tells Aizawa what he feels, because he's feeling a much stronger presence that's coming from the USJ. As he tells Aizawa this, Aizawa doesn't know what Izuku means and is actually confused. But he's still on guard. As 13 starts explaining everything, Izuku keeps on looking toward the center of the USJ, as Aizawa tells Izuku to pay attention. But then, all of a sudden, Izuku yells "run," as all of them are confused what Izuku means. But then, a huge portal appears in the middle of the USJ, and lots of villains come through the portal. This is more than the canon's one. There were lots and lots of villains. And the Nomu that steps out, it has a flame punch that can stop regeneration, which is a major downside for Izuku, as both Izuku and Aizawa get into a fighting stance as Aizawa tells Izuku to run as well. Then Izuku laughs and tells Aizawa that he's not gonna be running away. As Izuku looks back to see his class being teleported away by Kirigiri's mist, as he starts running toward it, but the mist dissipates, and then he sees that his class was teleported around the USJ. Izuku's furious at this as he starts rampaging through the villain crowd as he gets to the shipwreck in the USJ, as he sees that Froppy and Mineta are on the boat, and the villains were surrounding him. As Izuku doesn't know what to do, he then jumps into the river and does a massive punch, which brings all the water on shore and brings the boat onto land, as both Froppy and Mineta climb out of the boat, as they were both confused in what just happened. As Izuku told them what just happened, they were both surprised at Izuku's strength. But then, Froppy points out that everyone is regrouping at the top of the USJ, and both Froppy and Mineta call over Izuku to come with them, but Izuku refuses and starts running into the villain crowd, defeating as many villains as he can. But all of a sudden, the Nomu punches Izuku straight in the head with his fire regeneration quirk, as Izuku is unable to regenerate from that punch, as Izuku leaves a giant crater in the wall as he falls to the ground. As Aizawa is furious by this, he runs at the Nomu using his quirk, and stops the Nomu from using his quirk for a few seconds. But Aizawa couldn't hold it up for any longer and blinks. At the very second that Aizawa blinks, the Nomu smashes Aizawa's head into the ground. As Aizawa is being smashed into the ground, Izuku sees this and goes into a furious rage, as his instincts takes over and start rushing at the Nomu. As Izuku's confused what is happening, as he's in the backlines as his instincts are taking over, as he's trying to take control of his body, but he's unable to. Right then and there, Izuku starts punching the Nomu, but it's to no avail, as the Nomu punches Izuku one time and Izuku falls back. As Izuku falls back toward Aizawa, as Aizawa reaches out with his bloody hand and touches Izuku. But then, a pop-up pops up, saying forced regeneration, as his slime takes over Aizawa's body and starts regenerating it to its max strength. As Aizawa is confused what's going on, and so is Izuku. But then, Aizawa pops out, and he's fully healed, and Izuku gained a new ability called Eraser Punch. As Izuku had no time to think, he clears his mind and rushes at the Nomu, as he uses his new ability called Eraser Punch, as he punches the Nomu straight in the head with all of his power, as he yells Eraser Punch, as he cleanly punches off the Nomu's head. As he lands to the ground, still in his adrenaline rush, he calms down and tries to think and analyze the situation and what just happened, as he realizes that he just fully healed Aizawa and that he kinda took his quirk or copied it somehow, as he just gained the abilities of it. As he doesn't know what's going on, he tries to test out his theory, and he engulfs the dead body of the Nomu. After he does this, he sees that he got the abilities of the Nomu, and that his regular strength and abilities and regeneration skill were boosted by a lot, and that he gained an ability called Flame Kick. As Izuku was confused, but this still proved Izuku's theory. But then, all of a sudden, Shigaraki starts scratching his face and starts yelling in anger, and then lunges at Izuku, but Izuku dodges, and Shigaraki's about to lunge again, but then Kirigiri envelops Shigaraki in a mist and teleports him away. But then, Izuku felt exhausted and fell to the ground. At that very moment, All Might bursts through the door yelling, "I'm here," and he sees all the destruction and all the villains laying on the ground, and then he sees Izuku. As he sees him laying on the ground, All Might gets angry and gets to Izuku as quickly as possible, and then he sees that Izuku is still alive and assures himself that he won't let anything like this happen to him again. As Izuku wakes up, he sees that he's in the re-infirmary room and that he's with Recovery Girl. As immediately Izuku asks for one of Recovery Girl's hairs, as she's very confused in why Izuku is asking this, as she starts looking around Izuku, seeing if Izuku had any severe brain damage, as Izuku says that he's not hurt right now, and that he just wants to test something out. Recovery Girl pulls off a hair and hands it to Izuku, as she starts babbling on and how Izuku might be crazy. As Izuku grabs the hair and then immediately absorbs it with his slime quirk. And then he gets a pop-up saying that he got Restoration Arm. As Izuku's confused, he realizes that he might be able to heal anyone if he uses his hands and touches them with it. As Izuku's joyed that he must have been able to copy quirks now, as Izuku starts jumping in joy. As Recover Girl yells at Izuku and tells him to stop jumping and that it's dangerous. As Recover Girl asks Izuku why he was jumping so much and that he was so cheerful. And then Izuku shows Recovery Girl what he got. And Recovery Girl was stunned by this, as she was so confused in how Izuku was able to heal himself with his arms. As Recovery Girl asks how, he explains that he gained the abilities from eating her hair, as she was very confused in what just happened. As Recovery Girl called over All Might and tells Izuku what just happened. As Izuku starts explaining, All Might is confused and is actually worried in what just happened to One for All. As Izuku assures him that One for All's purpose is different and it's supposed to be passed down and that it can't be changed in any way. As All Might releases a sigh of relief. As Izuku starts cheering in joy, as he's happy that he's gotten a new ability that he can use with his quirk. As someone knocks on the door, All Might immediately buffs up and sees that the class is coming in. As everyone starts to talk to Izuku and ask him how he is. As everyone starts to leave, Aizawa walks in and closes the door. As he asks Izuku and how he was able to beat the Nomu. As Izuku explains in what happened. And he also explains that he ate a bit of Recovery Girl's hair and that he also gained a Recovery Girl's ability, but only to a slight extent, as he was able to gain their quirk but in a different way. As Aizawa was confused, but assured Izuku that there will be a lot of training ahead, but Izuku's confused what Aizawa means. As Aizawa starts to explain that there's going to be a sports festival and that he has around 2 weeks to train all of his new abilities and to get himself ready for the sports festival. As All Might interrupts and tells him that this is where he needs to show people that he'll be the next #1 hero and put a smile on everyone's face and give hope to people. As Izuku felt the pressure of what the sports festival is actually about. Okay, as the day ends, both Deku, Ida, and Uraraka start walking toward the train station like in the regular canon. But then, Denki comes over and asks them if he can walk with them because Mineta left home early that day. As none of them eject, they all start walking together toward the train station. But then, Izuku asks them a weird question that they were not expecting. Izuku asks them if he can have a hair sample of their hair, as all of them were confused on why Izuku asked this question. But Izuku starts explaining this and they agree, as they all hand a hair sample, and Izuku absorbs their hair and gains the ability absorbing the hair samples from Ida, Uraraka, and Denki, as immediately he gets thrusters on his feet and a floating quirk on his legs, as now he can fly. But then Izuku gets Denki's hair and he absorbs it. As he does this, he's able to make a Chidori in his hand. Don't worry, it's not related to chakra in any sense. It's just Denki's quirk and it looks like the Chidori, so I'm gonna give it the name Chidori, okay? So don't worry about it. As Uraraka, Ida, and Denki are just surprised at Izuku's new strength, as all of them start bombarding Izuku with questions on how he was able to do it, as Izuku starts explaining his quirk again, as all of them are just surprised that his quirk is able to do this. As Uraraka asks Izuku if she wants him to train him, as he agrees and actually wants everyone to train him, as all of them agree and decide to train Izuku. As Denki, Uraraka, and Ida start training Izuku, Izuku was able to understand Ida's and Uraraka's quirk the most because he's been with them most of the time and knows what their quirk can do. He's having a bit of trouble with Denki's quirk, but he's able to understand it soon enough. As Izuku's using Ida's quirk, he uses the reciprocal burst and flies super fast and flies into a tree, breaking the tree straight in half, as all of them are in shock in what Izuku was able to do with his reciprocal burst. As Deku didn't feel like he was training with Denki as much, so he starts training with Denki for the second half of the week. As they're all both training, Izuku learns how to reform his electricity and starts using it in different ways, as he used it as a shield and a big hammer, as Denki is just surprised because he can't even do that. As training comes to the end the next day, they all go home and get ready for the sports festival. As Izuku's sleeping, he thinks of things that he might be able to do when the sports festival starts, as he comes up with ideas and strategies in his head. So as the next day comes, Izuku gets ready to go to school. As he goes to school, Aizawa starts explaining what the sports festival is going to be about, as everyone puts on their gym outfits and goes outside. As they go outside, they all see a huge crowd surrounding them, as they all start to cheer, as Midnight starts to explain and tells Izuku to come up on stage to give a speech. As Izuku doesn't know what he's gonna say, he starts saying that he hopes everyone does a good job and starts saying some random stuff, as all of them are confused in what Izuku's saying, as Izuku was not prepared for this. As Izuku walks off the stage, depressed that he wasn't able to give a good speech, as Ida walks up to Izuku and gives him a pat on the back. As everyone gets ready for the race, they all start seeing Izuku turn on his thrusters as he starts flying up in the air, as all of them are wondering in how Izuku has this ability. The last thing that they remember, Izuku had a predator quirk, and they don't remember Izuku having this quirk. As all of them are wondering, Midnight yells go, as all of them start running through, as Izuku's flying over all of them, as Izuku is in first place. Since Izuku is much further than everyone else, he encounters the multiple 0-point robots much earlier, as Izuku lands and thinks that this is going to be fun, as he covers his hand in electricity and starts destroying each 0-point robot. As the 0 points landed, it blocked everyone's path as everyone's wondering how to get through it, as Izuku kept on flying through the air. As Todoroki just made an ice bridge and then destroyed it to get over their 0-point robots, as Bakugo just flew over it with his explosions. And everyone else just found different ways to get over the 0-point robot. As Izuku decides to use One for All and the reciprocal burst to increase his speed. As he does this, he dashes through every other obstacle, flying right through the gate, getting first place. As both Bakugo and Todoroki are still at the second obstacle, as both of them are fighting to get ahead of each other. As both of them get to the third obstacle, Bakugo starts to fly through it and Todoroki makes a bridge again, getting through the obstacle as he breaks the bridge, not allowing anyone else to get through. As both Bakugo and Todoroki start battling their way through to the gate, as Bakugo makes second place and Todoroki gets third. As immediately as Bakugo got through the gate, he rushed at Izuku, asking him how he was able to get that power. As Izuku started to explain his quirk again and tells him that Ida and Uraraka gave him hair samples. As Bakugo hears this, he gives death glares to both Ida and Uraraka, as Uraraka shriveled in sheer, as Ida just looked at Bakugo back. As Izuku walked up to Ida and Uraraka, apologizing to them, telling them that he probably should have not told Bakugo. They said it's alright and that it's not that big of a problem. But then, out of nowhere, Midnight calls everyone over, telling them that it's the start of the cavalry battle. As everyone gets excited and started choosing their teams. As Ida and Uraraka ask Izuku if they can join their team. As Izuku asks them if they're sure if they want to join his team because he has the most points and everyone's probably going to be coming toward him. As both of them nod, telling them that they want to join his team because they're his friend. As Izuku smiles, accepting their offer. But then, out of nowhere, Hatsume came in asking Izuku if she can join their team. As Izuku confused and asks who she is. As Hatsume responds by saying that she's a student of the support course. As Izuku thinks and accepts her offer. As now, Hatsume, Ida, and Uraraka and Izuku are a team. As the cavalry battle starts, both Bakugo's team and Todoroki's team start charging at Izuku. As Izuku tells Uraraka to make everyone float. As Uraraka asks Deku why, but Deku just tells Uraraka to make everyone float now, as Uraraka makes everyone else float except for Deku, as Deku starts charging up one for all on his feet, and jumps up into the air, as they kept on going higher and higher, as they went higher than the stadium itself. As Bakugo got angry at this, and started flying up into the air by himself, as everyone was wondering what Bakugo is going to be able to do. As he kept on flying, he was this close to touching Deku's headband, but right then and there, Deku tells Uraraka to let go, as they start falling to the ground, as Izuku turned into a slime immediately, and cushioned their fall as immediately as they hit the ground. As Izuku turned back, he forgot about Todoroki, as Todoroki rushed in and grabbed Izuku's headband. Izuku got mad and told Uraraka to make them float again, and told Ida to use his reciprocal burst, and he's gonna use his as well. As both Ida and Izuku use their reciprocal burst and rush at Todoroki. As Todoroki started to make ice structures blocking their path, but Izuku kept on beating them down and breaking them so they can get through. As Hatsume used one of her grappling support items and grabbed both Todoroki's and Izuku's headband and brought him back, as Izuku thanked Hatsume as she started bragging about her support gear. But their battle wasn't done yet, as Bakugo's team just landed on the ground and Todoroki's team just turned around, and they both started rushing at them again. As with no other choice, Izuku knew that he had to go on the offensive, as Izuku made 2 Chidoris in his hand, and then slammed it into the ground, creating an area wave of electricity, shocking and paralyzing both Bakugo's and Todoroki's team. But not only did it paralyze both of the teams, it made a smokescreen for Izuku's team to escape. As Todoroki notices that Bakugo still has his headband, he makes an ice pillar, making his team jump up into the air. As Bakugo didn't notice, Todoroki landed right next to him and grabbed his headband. As Bakugo was more furious than ever and started rushing at Todoroki's team. But he wasn't fast enough from using all those explosions to get to Izuku's team, and getting down safely caused his arms to hurt. As his arms hurt, his explosions weren't as effective, so he wasn't able to get to Todoroki fast enough, as Todoroki escaped with Bakugo's headband. But Bakugo isn't gonna fail. As he sees some other people with some headbands, he rushes at them and grabs their headbands, as he gets 4th place on the cavalry battle. As Izuku's team escaped, they got 1st place, and this is because Izuku had both Todoroki's and his headband, so they were able to pass. And they didn't have many other troubles with other teams because they weren't as strong as Todoroki's team or Bakugo's team. So now we go on to the one-on-one fights. So we start off with all of Class 1A sitting in the break room, as Todoroki walks up to Izuku and tells him that he's gonna be beating him, and there's no way that he's gonna let Izuku win. As Izuku chuckles and tells Todoroki that he might have a chance in beating him, but it's probably unlikely. As Todoroki looks at Izuku with a grin and tells him that he better be ready. As all of Class 1A thought there was gonna be a fight, but both Izuku and Todoroki walk away from each other. As everyone was wondering what was going on, Izuku was called over to fight Shinso, as Izuku leaves the break room and goes to the stadium. But right before he could enter the stadium, Ojiro rushes up and tells Izuku that he probably shouldn't answer Shinso's questions, as Izuku's confused what Ojiro means, but still enters the stadium. As both Shinso and Izuku get ready for their fight, as Shinso starts off by asking Izuku if he thinks that Ojiro would ever become a good hero, as Izuku grits his teeth not saying anything. As Shinso continued by asking Izuku if he did become a hero, he'd become a bad hero. As Izuku couldn't handle it anymore and told Shinso to shut up, as Shinso grinned and said that the fight is over. Then all of a sudden, Izuku stopped where he was standing, as All Might looked on, worried what was going to happen to Izuku, as Izuku started walking back toward the end of the arena. But before he could walk off the end of the arena, all the One For All users show up. But not only did the One For All users show up, it was Ida, Uraraka, and Denki, as Izuku snaps out of the mind control and rushes back at Shinso, giving him a massive punch straight to the chin, as Shinso falls back, falling out of the arena. As the announcer states that Izuku won, Izuku went up to Shinso and gave him a hand and picked Shinso up, as Shinso apologized, telling Izuku that he never meant those things, as Izuku said it's fine and that it's his quirk and it's not a big deal, as both of them are now friends. As all the other matches go the same, just like canon. So now we're gonna hop right into the Todoroki versus Izuku fight. So we start off with Izuku coming back from his fight. As he was coming through the hallway, he sees Endeavor, as Endeavor asks Izuku to make Todoroki use his fire. As Izuku looked at Endeavor with a disgusted face, as he started walking away from Endeavor. As he turned around and told Endeavor that he's gonna make Todoroki use his fire, but not for him. He's gonna make him use his fire because he has to use his fire against me. As Izuku continued walking away with Endeavor's face having a smirk on it. As Izuku's and Todoroki's fight begins, Todoroki starts blasting Izuku with ice structures, as Izuku casually was punching them away. As Izuku started getting closer and closer to Todoroki, as Izuku started to talk to Todoroki, telling him that he probably couldn't beat him with just half of his power. As Todoroki asks Izuku if his father put him up to this. As Izuku said no and told Todoroki that he himself put him up to it. As Todoroki told Izuku that he'll never use his fire side. As Izuku smirked from ear to ear and rushed at Todoroki, smashing his head into the ground. As he picked up Todoroki and threw him toward the center of the arena. As Izuku yelled at Todoroki, telling him to get up. As he continued talking, telling Todoroki that he's so stupid for not using his left side, thinking that his fire side was part of Endeavor's quirk. In fact, it was his own quirk. As Todoroki got up, telling Izuku to shut up, as the left side of Todoroki's body was engulfed in fire. As Todoroki made a firewall and started blasting fire at Izuku, but Izuku was unfazed, as he rushed at Todoroki, telling him that he did a good job, as he threw Todoroki in the air and jumped up and kicked him out of the arena. Then the announcer says that Izuku won, as Izuku walked out of the stadium, picked up Todoroki, and went to Recovery Girl's office, as he put Todoroki in a bed and Recovery Girl healed him. As Todoroki recovers and wakes up, as he sees Deku, as Deku tells Todoroki that his own power is his, and he doesn't have to worry about his own power being someone else's, as he leaves the room. Now, all the fights go just like in canon again. Now, Ida gets ready, knowing that he has to fight Izuku. But while Ida was thinking, he couldn't come up with a plan to fight Izuku. Every scenario saw him losing. So Ida decides that he's just gonna have to do his best. But then, Izuku enters the break room and sees that he has to fight Ida. And he walks up to Ida and tells him that it's gonna be a fun fight. Since Izuku doesn't have any grudges or anything that he has to do for someone, he's thinking of having a fun fight this time. As Izuku and Ida enter the stadium, Ida starts to attack Izuku, as Izuku easily is dodging them. As Ida's thinking of using his reciprocal burst, but holds off. As Izuku's getting bored of just like dodging, he gives a swift kick to Ida's ribs. As Ida flies toward the end of the arena, almost falling off. As Ida thought this was the perfect time to use his reciprocal burst. As he was about to do it, Izuku came out of nowhere and pushed Ida off the arena as Ida fell to the ground. Then the announcer says that Izuku has won another fight. Then Izuku walks off the arena, picks up Ida, and tells Ida that that was a good fight. As both Izuku and Ida start laughing their way back to the break room. But someone was unhappy, and that person was Bakugo, cause he knew that he had to fight Izuku in the next round. As both Ida and Izuku get back to the break room, Bakugo immediately rushes at Izuku, making a large explosion at Izuku's face, but Izuku easily dodges this and continues talking with Ida, as Ida's just confused in what was going on. As Bakugo says, "You damn nerd, don't you dare get in my way." As Izuku just shrugs it off and continues talking with Ida, as Ida is even more confused what was going on. But Bakugo got even more angry at this, as he started rushing at Izuku with even more larger explosions, as everyone is wondering what was going on. But then, out of nowhere, Aizawa kicks open the door and nullifies Bakugo's quirk, as Bakugo is wondering what happened to his explosions. As Aizawa started talking to Bakugo, telling him that if he continues on doing this, he's gonna make him forfeit the next match. As Bakugo calms down and sits down and gives death glares to Izuku. But Izuku's unfazed by this, as he just continues on talking to his friends. But in the back of his mind, he thinks about why Bakugo is acting more aggressive than usual today. As Izuku and Bakugo get into the arena, ready to fight. As Bakugo rushes at Izuku and does a flurry of punches, but Izuku either dodges or regenerates. As Izuku was getting more confused and bored in what Bakugo was doing, he kicks Bakugo back, as Bakugo gets angry at this and gets right back up and starts doing more explosions, as Izuku kept on doing this for a while. But then, Izuku got more and more angry and punched Bakugo with an eraser punch, which made Bakugo stop using his explosions, as Bakugo got right back up and put his hand on Izuku's face. As Bakugo tried to use his explosions, but he couldn't. As Izuku kicks Bakugo straight in the face, as Bakugo falls right back down. Then, Izuku asks Bakugo the question. He asks him why Bakugo is acting more aggressive than usual. But then, Bakugo answers by saying because he was always the top dog, and Izuku was always beneath him. But then, out of nowhere, Izuku was able to surpass him. But then, Bakugo continued by saying that it's also not fair that Izuku was able to get other people's quirks. But then, Izuku answers Bakugo's question by saying the quirks that he got from the other people were a gift, and he's able to use his gifts. As Bakugo is just looking at Izuku, snarling at him. As Izuku continues by saying that no one's always the top dog, as now I surpassed you and someone will surpass me. As Bakugo is just angry at this and is about to punch Izuku in the face, but before then, Izuku punches Bakugo right in the chin, knocking him out, as the announcer says that Izuku won. As Izuku was walking back, All Might interferes and asks Izuku what was going on, as Izuku answers All Might's question and tells him about what Bakugo told him. But then, Izuku asks All Might if it's wrong to use a gift, as All Might answers Izuku's question telling him that it's not, and that One for All is actually a gift, so it's not wrong to use a gift. But then Izuku got a glimmer of hope, believing All Might's words. Then, All Might continued by telling Izuku that he'll talk to Bakugo and change his mind, as Izuku thanks All Might for doing this for him. So now we're gonna go to when All Might starts handing the medals, as Izuku gets first place, Bakugo gets second, and Ida gets third place. So we're gonna start off where I left off, when everyone's at this sports festival. As everyone leaves that day, everyone's just wondering what's gonna happen the next day. As everyone gets to class, they see Aizawa waiting for them. Aizawa starts to explain to everyone as everyone sits down, telling everyone about internships, telling everyone that this is gonna be a very important journey in their hero course, and that this is gonna help them throughout when they're a hero. As Izuku takes this to heart and thinks about what internship that he should take. But since Izuku got first place in the UA Sports Festival, he's gotten a lot of internship letters. Izuku doesn't know which one to pick. He's just thinking as class ends, as Izuku just goes to the cafeteria, as All Might calls Izuku over, telling him to meet him. Izuku meets All Might and sees him shivering. All Might hands Izuku a letter, telling him that he should probably take this internship course. As Izuku opens the letter and sees that it's from Gran Torino. As All Might shivering, he continues telling Izuku that he should probably take this course and it would help him to become a better hero. Izuku's just thinking as he just realizes that All Might's shivering because of this person. Izuku just gets afraid because if All Might's being afraid of this one person, he wonders what's gonna happen to him if he takes this course. as Izuku gulps, telling All Might that he'll take the internship. As All Might left, he told Izuku good luck. When the next day ends, everyone gets to the train station so they can get to their internship. When they get there, Izuku sees Ida walking away sternly. Izuku's confused and looks around to see Todoroki seeing the same thing. As he's about to ask Todoroki, his trains come by as Izuku realizes that he needs to go, as he enters the train. When Izuku gets to Gran Torino's rundown house, he enters the door as he sees Gran Torino laying on the ground bleeding, as Izuku immediately turned into a slime and engulfed Gran Torino. When Gran Torino woke up or just saw Izuku, he just sees himself encased in this blue bubble. As Gran Torino started to fight out, Izuku realizes that Gran Torino isn't hurt. He spits Gran Torino out as he transforms back into his human self. Then Izuku asks Gran Torino why he did that. As Gran Torino said that's enough questions about him, and it's time that he has questions about Izuku. Then Gran Torino asks Izuku what his quirk is. Izuku starts to explain his quirk, and Gran Torino is just amazed, and tells Izuku that he has a pretty good chance in becoming the #1 hero, as Izuku just blushes. Then Gran Torino asks Izuku how far he's been able to master One for All, as Izuku answers Gran Torino, telling him that he's been able to master it pretty well, but he hasn't been able to master all the other abilities. Gran Torino is confused what Izuku just meant, as Gran Torino asks Izuku what he means. Izuku explains, telling Gran Torino that there's other abilities with One for All. Gran Torino is just stunned and asks Izuku how he knows this. As Izuku explains his quirk again, Gran Torino says that his quirk is actually very good, and it's probably one of the best quirks to go with One for All. But before Izuku or Gran Torino could say anything else, Izuku gets a pop-up telling him that he has acquired Gran Torino's abilities. Izuku is just confused what this is. As he explains this to Gran Torino is just confused and asks Izuku what he means. Izuku continues, telling Gran Torino that he's able to kind of get other people's quirk, but he can use it in different ways. As Gran Torino looks at Izuku in amazement and awe. Then he asks Izuku how far his quirk can go, as Izuku just shrugs his shoulders, not knowing how far. As Gran Torino then says that their main priority is mastering the abilities of One for All, and using his quirk better and improving it. As Izuku nods his head as they get started with their training. Izuku's training is going to be pretty different. If you haven't realized, Izuku has already mastered the standard version of One for All, the one that All Might uses. But Izuku hasn't used Black Whip or Float in any of these occasions, and there's a reason I didn't make Izuku use these. So I hope you guys like the thing I'm going to be doing here. As Gran Torino and Izuku get outside, Gran Torino tells Izuku that he should use his quirk now. As Izuku is using his quirk, he flies up into the air using Float. As Izuku realizes that he can fly without using Uraraka's and Ida's quirk. As Izuku's flying around with Float, he realizes that Float must have evolved and stockpiled on each other to become much stronger. As he's flying around, he realizes that he's actually extremely fast, and it's probably equivalent to a bullet train. As Izuku's flying around, he's actually never combined a quirk, as he's only layered it on top of each other. As Izuku is just thinking about this, he starts to combine Uraraka's quirk with Float and Gran Torino's quirk with Ida's quirk. As he's doing this, he combines all of those together to create a new quirk, as he creates Super Flight. As Izuku turns on this quirk, he immediately flies up into the air above the earth. As Izuku is just confused what's going on, because in less than a millisecond, he was already above the earth. As Izuku realizes that he's actually not that cold or warm, as he can't even breathe. As Izuku's wondering what's going on, he realizes that his slime body is more useful than he thought. As Izuku flies down slowly as he possibly can, down to earth without crashing down and breaking something. As he finds Gran Torino's house, he flies down and sees Gran Torino, as Gran Torino is just looking at Izuku because he just saw Izuku and disappeared up into the air, as Gran Torino is just confused in what's going on. Then Gran Torino saw Izuku and screamed up into the air, asking Izuku how he was able to go that fast. Izuku just comes down and tells Gran Torino that he actually combined all of the quirks that he got, as he's been able to combine Ida's quirk, Uraraka's quirk, Float, and his quirk. Gran Torino is just amazed and tells Izuku that he should probably try it out by flying around the earth. As Izuku thinks to himself, thinking that he's probably no way that he's probably going to be able to fly around the earth. As Gran Torino says that he was able to fly above the earth in less than a millisecond. So he's been able to fly around the earth in about a few minutes. As Izuku thinks to himself, he realizes that this is probably true. As he readies himself, he immediately blitzes through as he's flying around the earth multiple times. As Izuku uses his reciprocal burst, it takes him a much shorter amount of time to fly around the earth, as Izuku's just wondering how powerful this new ability is. So basically, I'm making him Shinra from Fire Force, if you're wondering. So we continue our story with Izuku being able to control the speed. In a few weeks, Izuku's been able to control the speed illegitimately, as he's been able to control it from being extremely slow to being extremely fast. But when Izuku uses his reciprocal burst, he's just extremely zipping through the earth in less than a millisecond. That's how fast I'm going to be making Izuku. So it's kind of going to be like Koro Sensei from Assassination Classroom as well, if you're wondering. And so we continue our story with Izuku not only training this new flight ability, but also training his black whips. As Izuku's training with this, he realizes that this quirk increases his power whenever he's getting angry, as Gran Torino started taunting him and how he's using those whips. And as Izuku gets angry, his power with the black whips get much stronger. Since Izuku's been training so much, his regular abilities have increased as well, as his strength is probably equivalent to 1/2 of Prime All Might strength, and that's pretty powerful if you haven't noticed. As we continue our story, Gran Torino is very impressed with Izuku and tells Izuku that he's probably ready to go out in the real field, as he says that they're probably going to be doing a patrol now, as Izuku gets excited, wanting to see how heroes actually work. As Izuku puts on his hero costume and follows Gran Torino, they get to a subway station as they enter the station and ride toward the city. As they get toward the city, all of a sudden, a huge Nomu flies through the window of the subway and starts attacking Gran Torino and Izuku, as Gran Torino told Izuku that he'll be fine and told him to go check out what's happening outside. As Izuku flies outside, seeing what's going on. As all of a sudden, Izuku sees Ida going into an alleyway, as Izuku's just wondering what's going on. As Izuku flies toward Ida, he sees that Ida's laying on the ground, as all of a sudden Stain was about to stab Native, another hero who was going to be killed by the hero killer Stain. As Stain looked at Izuku, confused who he is. As Ida told Izuku to run away, telling him that this is his fight. As Izuku trusts Ida and just walks away from the fight. I'm just playing with you guys. So what really happens is, Izuku asks Ida what's going on, as Ida has no time to explain and tells Izuku that this is the person who injured his brother and that he's gonna be getting his revenge. As Izuku just sighs as he walks up to Ida and tells him that he shouldn't act so reckless, so he's able to add armor to other people. But as Stain sees this, he's annoyed and wonders what Izuku's doing. As Izuku gets his hands back, he realizes that he couldn't heal Ida's paralysis and thinks that this is probably the Stain person's quirk. As Izuku looks on, he sees Stain rushing at him, telling them to stop their jibber-jabbering, as he stabs Izuku straight through the hand. But Izuku's unfazed as Stain just pulls out the sword and is about to lick it, but sees that there's no blood on it. As he looks at the hole that he put in Izuku, he sees that the hole is reforming, as Stain is just confused what's going on. But then all of a sudden, Izuku raises up his fist, and then he immediately... So we start off where we left off, so I'm going to be recapping what happened. So Izuku just walked in on Ida and Stain, them fighting, as Ida is paralyzed laying on the ground. As Izuku raised up his fist and is about to punch Stain, as Stain jumps back and Izuku's fist lands on the ground. When Izuku's fist makes contact with the ground, it creates a huge crater which basically shatters everything surrounding it. When Stain sees this, he's just astonished and wonders how powerful Izuku is. As he looks at Izuku, he tells Izuku if he can't make him paralyzed, he might as well cut him up into little pieces. When both Izuku and Stain were rushing at each other, as Stain was slicing and dicing toward Izuku, Izuku was just trying to dodge all the attacks, as he decided that he's gonna use one of Gran Torino's techniques, as he uses one of his thrusters to redirect Stain's attention toward it, as he immediately used 1% of One for All into his fist and punches Stain, which completely knocks him out. As Ida just looked at Izuku in astonishment, he just wondered how powerful Izuku really is. As the paralysis wore off, Ida got up and told Izuku that this wasn't his fight and that this was his. Izuku just looked down toward the ground and walked toward Ida, as he looked at Ida's face and slapped him, as Ida just fell to the ground by the force of the slap, since Izuku is really strong. As Ida looked up at Izuku, Izuku told Ida that this is not his fight and that he shouldn't be driven by revenge. But before anything else could happen, Todoroki appeared and sees Izuku. Then Todoroki was about to ask Izuku why he called him. Then he notices the hero hunter and realized what happens. As Izuku told Todoroki that he was gonna call him if the battle got too intense. As right then and there, Native screamed out of nowhere, as they all turned around and saw Stain getting right back up. As Izuku sighs, rushing back in and punching Stain straight in the face, but with this time 2% of One for All, which actually completely knocked out Stain as he fell to the ground unconscious. But right then and there, Endeavor arrives and starts praising Izuku as he sees the Stain killer unconscious, as he asks Todoroki if he was the one who defeated the Stain killer. As Todoroki shakes his head, telling Endeavor that it was actually Izuku. As Endeavor looked with a disappointed face toward Izuku and Todoroki and basically everyone there, realizing that Shoto wasn't the one who defeated the Stain killer. As the next day rolls by, All Might explains the rescue training race, telling everyone that this race is where they're gonna have to get to him first, and whoever makes it to him first is the winner. As everyone lines up, getting ready for the race. As they yell go, Izuku immediately turned on his thrusters. Before even anyone could notice, Izuku got to All Might before All Might could even blink. That's how fast Izuku was, as everyone just saw Izuku as a blur. As everyone's just looking at Izuku in shock. Even All Might, thinking that he wasn't even this fast in his prime. As Izuku chuckles, asking All Might if he won. As All Might just nods, as everyone's just confused in what just happened. When the race ends, All Might calls over Izuku, telling him to meet him after class. As Izuku agrees, the class ends as Izuku meets All Might and sees All Might sitting down on a couch. As All Might is deflated, asking Izuku how he was able to go that fast. As Izuku explains to All Might is just astonished and asked him if he combined One for All with it. As Izuku just looks in shock, realizing that he didn't, as he wonders how fast he'll actually go if he combined One for All with it. Yeah, that's right, I'm giving Izuku light speed. Yeah, that's right. He's gonna be as fast as light. Do I need to emphasize it more? I feel like I do. He's gonna go fast as light. That's right. So we continue on with the story as All Might is just looking in astonishment, realizing that he didn't even combine One for All with that quirk. As Izuku decides that he might as well test it out, as he tells All Might to meet him outside. As All Might gets there, Izuku turns on his thrusters, and he legit turns on One for All as well in his feet. As he gets ready, he immediately thrusts through as he breaks the sound barrier and goes faster than light. As Izuku's particles were ripping off and reforming when he was slowing down. As All Might just looked at Izuku, saying nothing, telling Izuku to get started already. As Izuku said that he already did, as All Might is just looking in astonishment, asking him if he was really that fast. As Izuku just nods. As All Might realizes that the future is in pretty good hands. As the next day rolls by, Aizawa starts to explain what the final exams are, as everyone's getting anxious, thinking about what they're gonna be doing in the final exams. As everyone gets ready for the final exams, everyone starts to see what they can do. As Izuku just starts training in his new abilities, making sure he can improve it and make it better. As the exam day comes by, Izuku takes the written portion of the exam and just does regular, just like in canon. As we skip to the teacher versus student fights. Here's where the difference is gonna be. So Bakugo's not gonna be fighting All Might. It's only gonna be Izuku, okay? Principal Nezu is gonna be fighting Bakugo, Kaminari, and Ashido. Okay, that's what's gonna happen here. As both Kaminari, Ashido, and Bakugo pass the exam because Bakugo's on the team and he carried them. And Bakugo is angry because only Izuku is gonna be fighting All Might. As All Might and Izuku get ready for the exam, All Might doesn't put on the restraints. He knows how powerful Izuku is, so he gets ready for an amazing fight. As Izuku enters the city, seeing All Might. As All Might rushes at Izuku as fast as he possibly can, as Izuku easily dodges this. And All Might is thinking that Izuku's probably gonna use his thrusters, as he grabs Izuku's legs and is about to, rip him off because he knows Izuku can heal. But before All Might could grab Izuku's legs, Izuku immediately turned on his thrusters and used his light speed and immediately blitzed through and made it toward the gate. That's right, Izuku immediately passed because, he can go light speed, so Izuku's already on the other side of the gate passing the exam. As the next day rolls by, everyone is just praising Izuku for beating All Might, as Izuku says that it was nothing. As Aizawa walks in, telling everyone that everyone's actually going to be going to the training camp. As everyone gets excited, as Aizawa told everyone to be quiet, as he told everyone for the people who failed, they're going to be doing a lot more extra work. As for the people who failed, start sighing. As the next day arrives, as everyone gets on the bus after the confrontation with Class 1B. As everyone gets ready, they get to their first stop and see Pixie Bob and Mandalay as they're wondering what's going on. As they get out of the bus, Pixie Bob explains to them, telling them that their camp is all the way over there. As they ask Pixie Bob why she's telling them this. As Pixie Bob just smiles and touches the ground. As everyone realizes what's going on, they start running toward the bus, as Izuku's the only one who gets there. But Pixie Bob knew that was gonna happen and made sure that the mud would encase Deku as well, as she pushed Deku and everyone else down toward the forest as well. As everyone gets up, they see all these dirt monsters and wonder what's going on. As the dirt monsters come out of the shadow, Izuku immediately rushes toward them, defeating all of them, as everyone is just stunned, as all the monsters were defeated in under a second. As Pixie Bob is confused, she makes more and more monsters, as everyone finally gets a chance to beat them. As they're extremely hard to beat, but Izuku is having a very easy time beating them, as everyone's wondering how powerful Izuku really is. As everyone gets to the camp in under 30 minutes, as no one is even bruised because Izuku did all the work. As Pixie Bob is just stunned and annoyed and impressed at Izuku's strength, as she tried to kiss Izuku, but Izuku easily was dodging them. As everyone gets ready, Pixie Bob makes a meal for everyone and makes a special meal for Izuku. As Izuku eats it, he hurls, seeing that it's pretty disgusting. As he eats all the other food, as Mandalay tells everyone that she actually made the food herself, as everyone gets impressed. But then Mandalay tells everyone that she's not going to be making the food for them all the time, and that they're heroes as well, so they're going to be making their own food the next day when they're done with their training. So basically everything that happens in the hot springs just go like in canon, as Izuku gets an attachment to Koda, seeing that Koda is actually a pretty good kid, as Koda just doesn't like heroes because of his parents being dead. As the next day rolls by, Aizawa tells everyone that this is probably going to be their worst day ever, as everyone starts to train their quirks trying to improve it. As Izuku doesn't know how to improve his quirk, as he asks Aizawa what he could do. As Aizawa thinks what Izuku might be able to do, he thinks of what Izuku might be able to hold, as he asks Izuku if he'll be able to hold other people's quirks. As Izuku thinks, he wonders himself. As he gets everyone else's DNA samples by asking them for hair, as he explains to them, telling them that this is part of his training. As Kacchan was the most hesitant, but he gave a hair sample to Izuku. As he got all these hair samples, Aizawa told him to absorb them. As he does this, he scans every hair sample and gains all their quirks. And everything else isn't that important except for one quirk, the explosion quirk. As Izuku gets explosions on his feet. That's right, Izuku's gonna go even faster. So Izuku's able to explode things and with his feet, so Izuku's gonna be even faster in this what if. So let's say about 2 times light speed. I feel like that sounds right. Okay, so we're gonna go there. As Izuku's around much more faster, he's twice as fast with all these other abilities which increase his strength, agility, basically everything overall. As Izuku gains all of this, he starts training with these new abilities, gaining new insight on other people's quirks, understanding it more, evaluating them, and is appreciating everyone else's quirks and understanding why everyone uses it their way. As the day of training comes to an end, everyone starts to cook a meal for each other. As they start cooking, they realize that their cooking isn't that good, but they keep on eating, realizing that the food, even though it's not that great, is the only thing that they can eat, since they're all very hungry. But Izuku notices Koda going up a hill without even taking any food. So Izuku decides that he's gonna take some food up to Koda. As he gets there, he startles Koda, who is sitting up on the ledge, is thinking about life in general. As Koda looks at Izuku, he starts yelling at him, telling him to go away and that heroes aren't allowed here. As he starts yelling at Izuku, just like in canon. But then, out of nowhere, someone punched Izuku straight in the face. As Izuku, with a dull expression, turned his head and sees Muscular. As Muscular jumped back, not knowing how Izuku didn't even fall back, as his Muscular just plays this off as some weird quirk. As Muscular asks Izuku where Bakugo is. As Izuku just looks at Muscular and asks him why he wants to know where Bakugo is. As Muscular tells Izuku that it's none of his business. As Izuku gets sighs, as he just tells Muscular to get ready. As for some reason, Muscular's instincts tell him to create as much muscle fibers as he possibly can. As he starts creating these muscle fibers, as Izuku immediately rushes at him with full strength with light speed, as he immediately blitzes through, coming through Muscular, as Muscular immediately passes out. As Koda's just in amazement at Izuku's quirk. As Izuku turns around, telling Koda that a hero's job is to save people. And without saving people, there wouldn't be any people around. As Koda just looks at Izuku, as Izuku just tells Koda that they need to go now and that the others are in trouble. As Izuku gets there, he sees that everyone is already in a fight. As he sees Bakugo, he lands near Bakugo, telling him what was going on. As Bakugo gets excited, telling Izuku to not get in his way. As he immediately flied toward Aizawa, seeing Aizawa fighting Dabi. As Izuku immediately rushed in and kicked Dabi, as Dabi's head immediately fell off. As Dabi's head was just looking at Izuku, wondering who this kid is, as he was able to take him out immediately. As Dabi's double just fell back into a puddle of sludge. As Izuku's just wondering what's going on, confused. As he rushed back, Aizawa tells Izuku to relay this to Mandalay, telling everyone that everyone's in trouble and that they're allowed to use their quirks. As Izuku nods and flies toward Mandalay, telling her to tell everyone that they can use their quirks, as Mandalay just agrees. But then, out of nowhere, a villain appears with a huge sword. As they're about to attack Izuku, Izuku usually catches the sword and punches the villain, who got easily knocked out. But Izuku feels something weird going on. As he rushes back, he sees Tokiyami with his quirk encasing him. As Izuku immediately flies down, he starts to fly around Tokiyami, creating light to make Tokiyami's quirk go back into him. As Tokiyami's quirk went back into him, he thanked Izuku, telling him that he was really appreciated for Izuku's help. As Izuku just said it was fine. But Izuku felt something else. It wasn't Tokiyami that he felt. It was Mr. Compressed, as Mr. Compressed immediately was about to catch Izuku, as he compressed Izuku into a tiny ball, as Izuku couldn't do anything. See, the villains went for Izuku this time. They didn't go for Bakugo or anyone else like that. They wanted to go for Bakugo because he was the second strongest. But they found Izuku, and Muscular didn't know that that was Izuku. So that's what's gonna happen here. Mr. Compressed found Izuku and compressed Izuku and takes him back. As Tokiyami was too scared to use his quirk, thinking that it would overload him and basically kill everyone there. And Shoji wasn't powerful enough as Mr. Compressed easily got away. As Dabi said that they did good enough as they easily took Izuku back to their lair. As they uncompressed Deku, Izuku easily flies around, destroying everyone as he knocks everyone out as everyone just falls to the ground. But then Izuku felt that ominous presence again as All For One stepped out of the shadows. As All For One started telling Izuku that he's very impressive and asked him if he would like to join his villain league. As Izuku just stared at All For One, telling him that he'll never will join his villain league. As he was about to blitz All For One used one of his tentacles and pulled Izuku toward him. As Izuku was still unfazed as he just easily ripped it out. But he wasn't expecting what All For One was gonna do next. As All For One grabbed Izuku's forehead and stole Izuku's quirk. As Izuku was trying to phase away from All For One's hands using his flight speed quirk, he was unable to. As Izuku was about to do it again, but he was still unable to. He was wondering what was going on and realized that he wasn't unable to turn into a slime. He realized that All For One just stole his quirk. As All For One started laughing, telling Izuku that he's worthless now, as he face swats Izuku toward the side. As Izuku was thrown out of the building by All For One, he lands toward the ground as Izuku has a broken arm now, as Izuku can feel the pain. As Izuku gets up, telling All For One that he's not done yet, as All For One laughs, telling Izuku that he doesn't even have a quirk and that he can never be able to beat him. As all of a sudden, Izuku smiles as he immediately charges up One For All in both of his hands, as he rushes at All For One, as All For One is just wondering how Izuku still has a quirk. As Izuku still has remains of his old quirk, as Izuku uses some of his fire regenerative ability. If you remember, in the part 2 or whenever the USJ happened, Izuku got this ability as he punched All For One straight in the face. As All For One fell back, confused in how he can still feel pain after he got Izuku's abilities. As Izuku started pummeling All For One, as All For One is just wondering what's going on. As he pummels to the ground as he hits All For One's face as All For One falls unconscious. As All Might arrives, he sees Izuku laying on the ground, passed out. As the day ends, All For One was forced to give Izuku's quirk back, as everything else goes back to normal. See, I kind of rushed through the story because I think this is going to be the final part, guys. Because there's not much to say. Izuku's way overpowered. If we skip to the provisional license exams, basically what's going to happen is Izuku's going to be able to use all of his abilities, as everyone is just confused in how Izuku's this strong. As they just know that in the sports festival, all the abilities that Izuku had then, as Izuku has all these abilities that Izuku can use. As everyone's just wondering, and Izuku wins the provisional license exam. And then we continue on with the overhaul arc, as Izuku immediately sees Eri and sees that she's in trouble, as he just saves her and basically destroys Overhaul, since Overhaul is not much of a challenge for him. And then that's basically it, guys. So there's not going to be much of a story after this. So I think this is going to be the last part. So this is probably where I'm going to be ending it off. If you guys like this story, and if you guys want another part for me to explain the Overhaul arc and the provisional license arc, go ahead and, like the video, subscribe, do whatever you guys want. And other than that, guys, I'm going to be working on the other videos, and I actually have a collab coming soon. Because I know this video is not going to get many views as my other videos, but still, for the people who do watch this video all the way to the end, I'm going to be doing a collab, and you guys better be waiting for that. And it's going to be a really long one. It's going to be a 1-hour special, so you guys better be waiting for that. And other than that, guys, I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you guys later.